The room was heavy with silence, the dull buzz of the overhead light adding to the weight in the air. Ryan, a man whose broad shoulders now sagged under the pressure, sat across from Detective Clara Walsh. He had been defiant earlier, but the fire in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a calculating wariness. Clara placed a thick file on the table and slid it toward him. Inside were pictures and reports that painted a grim picture of his involvement in a dangerous network. On top of the file was something new, a report revealing that one of Ryan's younger crew members had flipped. "Your guy gave us everything," Claire said, her voice calm but piercing. "He told us how this all ties back to Anthony Kane." Ryan's jaw tightened, his fists clenching as he fought to keep his composure. "He's lying," he muttered. Clara leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "Are you sure? Because if you stay quiet, you're the one taking the fall. Kane won't save you." The tension crackled as Detective Ben Hayes added, "Help us bring him down, and you still have a chance. Stay silent, and you're done." Ryan's walls were crumbling, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Ryan sat in silence, his fists tightening as Detective Clara Walsh waited for his response. Her unwavering gaze and the file in front of him were relentless reminders of the truth closing in. Detective Ben Hayes leaned forward, his voice firm but coaxing. "Ryan, this is your last chance. Work with us, or you'll go down for everything alone." The words hit like a hammer, and Ryan exhaled sharply, the defiance draining from his posture. "All right," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "What do you need to know?" Clara didn't flinch. "Everything," she said with a cutting edge. "How Kane funds you, how he communicates, the other crews he's tied to." "Start talking." Ryan hesitated, his jaw clenching as if weighing the consequences, then finally nodded. "It's all through his businesses," Ryan began, his voice low. "Construction companies. He launders the money through contracts and pays us through fronts. We keep it quiet, but things get messy sometimes." Claire leaned in, her eyes sharp. "What about the other groups?" Ryan hesitated again, then answered. "There's a few. Same setup. We don't work together, but we all know the deal. Keep people scared, keep them out of his neighborhoods." Clara scribbled notes as Ben pressed. "And how does he reach you?" Ryan gave a small shrug, his voice almost bitter. "Through middlemen. Kane doesn't like getting his hands dirty." With every name and detail Ryan shared, Kane's carefully hidden network began to unravel. Detective Clara Walsh and her partner Ben Hayes sat in the operations room, surrounded by files and maps, the air thick with determination. Ryan's confession had cracked open the case, revealing names, places, and connections they could now pursue. Clara's sharp eyes scanned the list of Kane's middlemen, each name a new thread in the web of corruption. "We have enough to start tearing this apart," she said firmly, sliding the list toward Ben. He nodded, already calling their teams to action. The team mobilized quickly, following the trails Ryan had provided. Clara knew this was the turning point. The financial records showed Kane's construction companies funneling money to shell accounts, linking them to hate groups and criminal activities across the city. "He's been using these contracts to keep his hands clean," Clara explained to Ben as they pieced together the final pieces of the puzzle. Ben's tone was resolute. "This is it, Clara. We've got him. We just need to make it airtight." Clara nodded, her focus unshaken. "Every name, every location, every transaction. No loose ends. If he thinks he can hide behind his money and power, we're about to prove him wrong." Detective Clara Walsh and her team worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming trial. The precinct was alive with activity, every desk covered in stacks of evidence and papers. Claire's determination was unwavering as she pored over financial records, communication logs, and Ryan's testimony. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of Victor Kane's empire. "We need every detail to line up," Claire said to Ben Hayes as they reviewed the timeline of Kane's operations. "No gaps, no room for doubt." Ben scribbled notes while Sarah Lane, their tech expert, dug through Kane's digital footprint. "He's careful," Sarah remarked, clicking through pages of coded transactions and cryptic messages. "But not careful enough. There are patterns if you know where to look." Clara nodded. "We're going to connect every dot." The jury has to see the full scope of what he's done. The team rehearsed their arguments and cross-referenced the evidence, preparing for any counterattacks Kane's high-powered lawyers might launch. As the final preparations came together, Clara addressed her team. This isn't just about one man. It's about the people who've suffered because of his actions. Let's make sure we do this right. Her words energized the room, the team ready for the fight ahead. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the trial of Victor Kane began. Seated at the defense table in his tailored suit, Kane exuded an air of arrogance, though his clenched fists betrayed his unease. Detective Clara Walsh sat near the back, her sharp gaze fixed on the proceedings. She could feel the weight of her team's hard work as the prosecutor, Lauren Banks, approached the jury. Lauren's opening arguments were clear and precise, outlining the extensive web of evidence that tied Kane to his violent empire. Ryan, now a key witness, was called to the stand. His nerves were evident, but he spoke firmly, detailing how Kane's operations worked from the secret payments to the coded messages sent through his associates. Every word added weight to the prosecution's case. Kane's lawyers tried to discredit Ryan, pointing out his criminal past and his plea deal, but Ryan held his ground, bolstered by the mountain of evidence Clara's team had gathered. As the first day of the trial wrapped up, Clara couldn't help but glance at Kane. For the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. It wasn't over yet, but Clara knew they had delivered a strong opening blow. The courtroom was silent, every eye locked on the witness stand where Ryan's testimony continued. Though his hands trembled slightly, his voice was steady as he described Victor Kane's network with precision. He outlined the secret channels, the coded payments, and the threats used to keep everyone silent. The prosecutor, Lauren Banks, asked questions that pulled the jury deeper into the web of Kane's operations, leaving little room for doubt. When the defense attorney stood to cross-examine Ryan, the tone shifted. He aimed to paint Ryan as an unreliable criminal, desperate to save himself by throwing accusations at Kane. "Isn't it true that you've lied to protect yourself before?" The attorney pressed. Ryan hesitated, the tension in the room thickening. Clara Walsh, seated near the back, leaned forward, her heart racing. But Ryan lifted his head, his voice gaining strength. "Yes, I've made mistakes," he admitted, "but this isn't one of them. I'm telling the truth about Victor Kane." Ryan's honesty, paired with the mountain of evidence, shifted the tide. Kane's composed facade cracked slightly, his jaw tightening as murmurs rippled through the gallery. Clara exchanged a glance with Lauren. They were gaining ground, but the fight was far from over.